Chapter 14 takes that equality of gifts as given in 1 Corinthians 12 and moves a bit on it and tries to establish in them a counter argument to their prizing of ecstasy, not the drug, the state of being ecstatic, right? And so he starts out. Now, I would like all of you to speak in tongues, but even more to prophesy. One who prophesies is greater than one who speaks in tongues, unless someone interprets, so that the church may be built up. And I want to give the background for this. Philo of Alexandria was uh, a Jewish thought leader, call him, in Alexandria during the first century BC. So he's about 100 years before Paul, give or take. And he was very important, produced a lot of writings that have helped us understand at least a sort of diaspora Judaism that was taking place in Egypt at the time of the turn of the eras. Philo of Alexandria wrote in his Life of Moses that there are two types of Mosaic prophecy in Philo's Life of Moses. One is called noetic, and one is called ecstatic. Noetic prophecy corresponds to Moses's delivery of the special law, and it's active and rational. That is, God gives it to him, he speaks it to the people, it's written on stone, he transfers it on, he is in conversation with God, actively sort of interacting with the divine in order for this to be brought forth. But there's a lot of mind in it for Philo. The second kind is ecstatic prophecy, corresponds to when Moses predicts things. And it is passive in Philo's sense, more like the Pythian oracle. It's received and it's irrational. That is, it just comes in, imprints itself, and is spoken out. And I'm going to show you a Greek author who's not Jewish or Christian, or Jewish Christian, or even he's not a Christian convert. He's a of the generation of Saint Paul, contemporary of Saint Paul, and it goes like this: Plutarch was another thought leader, but in Greco-Roman times, in first century Roman Empire, and he wrote on philosophy. He wrote biographies of famous people, and here in his Moralia, he talks about prophecy and especially the oracles. The faculty of divining, like blank paper, is void of any reason or determination of itself, is susceptible of fantasies and presentiments, and without any ratiocination or discourse of reason, it touches on that which is to come, when it has withdrawn itself farthest from the present. Stick with me. This is going to go on for a bit, but it's worth having in your sense of what was going on. And from this, it withdraws by means of a certain disposition of body by which that state is produced, which we call inspiration or enthusiasm. Now, the body's sometimes endued naturally with this disposition. Most times, though, the earth casts forth to men, people, the sources and causes of several other powers and faculties, some of which carry men beside themselves into ecstasy and frenzy and produce maladies and mortalities. Others, again, are good, gentle, and profitable, as appears by those who have the experience of them. But this spring or wind or spirit of divination is most holy and divine, whether it comes by itself through the air. Notice the air, they thought gases produced this, or through the water of some spring. For being infused and mixed with the body, it produces an odd temperature and strange disposition in the soul, which a man cannot exactly express, though they may resemble or compare it to several things. For heat and dilation, it seems to open certain pores that make a discovery of future things, like wine, which causing fumes to ascend up into the head, puts the spirits into many unusual motions and reveals things that were laid up in secret. So in vino veritas, people tell people things when they've had a glass of wine. I'm sure you've never experienced this. When they have a glass of wine, they tell things that they don't tell other times. That's all Plutarch is saying. For drunkenness and hang on just a second. And mania, if we will believe Euripides, contains some divination, when the soul, being hot and fiery, banishes those fears to which prudence and sobriety are subject, and which extinguish and quench inspired enthusiasm. Now, that is a mouthful, but it boils down to Philo and Plutarch saying of ecstatic revelations that A, we believe they happen, B, they're caused by humors that occur in the body and change the receptivity and change to kind of trance-like or ecstatic states. And Plutarch says they are sometimes holy, they are sometimes divine, right? So these are ways to get into the ancient mind and the ancient culture in which prophecy is being discussed, in which tongues and the ecstasy of tongue speakers is being discussed. And for Paul, he likes noetic a lot more than he likes ecstatic. As we go through chapter 14, we're going to have Paul much preferring the mind over the trance, much preferring ratiocination, as Plutarch has it, over the spirit's taking unleashed role, at least as he's addressing the Corinthians. He'll say in chapter 14, I am glad I speak in more in tongues than any of you, but I do it at home when it's just for fun, right? It's he wants to tell them that he's got this spirit that they're talking about, but he wants to communicate why he doesn't let it loose in worship, because he's going to favor the noetic over the ecstatic. Everybody with me? Nod your head if you're with me. All right. So if that's the case, let's go on in Paul. Paul says in 14:1-3, and I'm going to do some repeating here, pursue love and strive for the spiritual gifts, and especially that you may prophesy. That's the very first verse in chapter 14. For those who speak in a tongue don't speak to other people, but to God, for no one understands them, since they're speaking mysteries in the Spirit. Now, notice he attributes it to the Spirit, but says it may not have a place in worship. But those who prophesy speak to other people for their upbuilding, other word, edification, and encouragement and consolation. Notice now, Paul thinks tongues are a prayer language in a way for him, in the way they're being used, ecstasy or not, and that prophecy has a purpose of edifying the community. So, in the context of worship, he's saying, I'd rather you be prophets. Those who speak in a tongue build up themselves, those who prophesy build up the church. Have we had any trouble with Corinthians thinking primarily of themselves before? Remember the ones that wanted to eat meat sacrificed to idols? They were keen on their right to eat. Paul said, you know what I do by habit? I give up rights to help other people. Here he's going to call on that again and say, I'm trying to habituate in you a natural spiritual lean toward the people around you rather than an incurvedness, as Luther puts it for the human predicament. Incurvatus in se, curved in on itself is how he portrays human predicament.